Let's dive right into a single, truly terrifying night in history, where one wrong decision could have literally ended human civilization as we know it. I want you to imagine the immense weight of the entire world resting completely on the shoulders of one ordinary person, a guy sitting in a room completely cut off from the outside world. Well, that is exactly what happened in 1983. It's a year that brought us closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than almost any other time in recorded history. To really wrap our heads around the gravity of this explainer, we have to set the scene. The date is September 26, 1983. The Cold War is at its absolute most dangerous phase. We're talking about the United States and the Soviet Union standing completely frozen on the very edge of nuclear war. And this wasn't just some theoretical standoff either. This was a hair-trigger reality where hundreds of millions of lives hung in the balance. Leaders on both sides were highly paranoid, heavily armed, and frankly, utterly convinced that the other side was preparing to strike first.
So how did we actually get to this brink? Looking at the timeline here is absolutely crucial. By early 1983, relations had reached a snapping point. Both nations possessed thousands of nuclear weapons, and what's more frightening is that both were fully prepared to use them. Then, just weeks prior to the night we're looking at, an absolute tragedy struck. Soviet fighter jets shot down a civilian plane, Korean Airlines Flight 007. All 269 people on board were killed. Tensions didn't just rise after that, they exploded. Everyone on both sides of the Iron Curtain was terrified, basically just waiting for the first move. And then on September 26th, the unimaginable actually happens.
Our story takes us deep underground, inside a highly classified Soviet command center. It's shortly after midnight. The man on duty is Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. He's a Soviet officer stationed in this secret bunker surrounded by banks of massive computers and early warning systems. He is essentially the eyes and ears of the entire Soviet nuclear defense network.
Now, his job was governed by a grim but incredibly straightforward protocol. Step 1, you monitor the Soviet satellites looking for any American aggression. Step 2, detect any signs of a nuclear launch. Step 3, report it immediately up the chain of command. And Step 4, which is the unavoidable consequence of Step 3, trigger a massive nuclear retaliation. Make no mistake about it, if Petrov reported an attack, it would automatically trigger World War III. His actions in this chair would decide the fate of the world.
So, shortly after midnight, the tense silence of that bunker is suddenly shattered. Piercing alarms begin to scream. The computer screens right in front of Petrov flash a blinding warning red. The system was crystal clear. It read, missile launch. According to the absolute best technology the Soviet Union had at the time, a nuclear attack from the United States had just been detected.
But it wasn't just one warning. Then came another, and another, and another. The Advanced Satellite Warning System reported that exactly 5 American nuclear missiles had been launched and were currently hurtling straight toward the Soviet Union. Petrov had only minutes to respond. Every single second ticking by was a second closer to impact. Now this is where things get really fascinating. We see this intense juxtaposition between cold, unfeeling machinery and human logic. According to a strict protocol, Petrov should have picked up the phone immediately. The computer system, backed by satellite data, insisted the attack was 100% real. But human intuition stepped in. It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces just didn't fit. Petrov started thinking through the scenario. If America genuinely intended to destroy the Soviet Union in a preemptive first strike, why would they launch only 5 missiles? A real, catastrophic attack would involve hundreds of warheads to wipe out the enemy's ability to fire back, right? Plus, the standard ground radar systems, which detect actual physical objects in the sky, were showing absolutely nothing.
So here is the absolute turning point. Petrov trusted his gut over his rigid Soviet protocol. He made a choice that carried literally unimaginable weight. He picked up the line to his commanders and stated confidently, "It's a false alarm." But here is the truly terrifying reality of that moment. He had absolutely no proof. None. He had nothing but his own intuition and deductive reasoning. If he was wrong, the entire Soviet Union could be destroyed in minutes without any chance to retaliate or even defend itself.
The next few minutes inside that bunker must have felt like a lifetime. Everyone present was simply waiting for the end of the world. If Petrov was wrong and the missiles were real, they would show up on the ground radar at any second, and then they would hit. Seconds passed, then minutes, nothing. There were no explosions, there were no incoming missiles, there was no nuclear war. That deafening silence was the ultimate confirmation.
It turns out, the state-of-the-art computer system had made a catastrophic mistake. What actually happened was a rare alignment of sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds. This had completely confused the Soviet satellites. Basically, a simple reflection of light created a false positive, tricking the computers into seeing the bright thermal signatures of missile launches. The attack had never happened. The machines were just wrong. One man's judgment, under the most extreme pressure imaginable, had prevented global catastrophe.
Now, you might logically expect that Stanislav Petrov would immediately become a heavily decorated national hero, right? Well, in the aftermath, the reality was the exact opposite. His superiors quietly buried the entire incident. The Soviet Union absolutely refused to admit to the world, or even to its own military, that its highly touted advanced warning system had so dangerously failed. Petrov received no medals. There were no parades. There was zero recognition of his world-saving deduction. He simply returned to his normal, quiet life.
For years, the global public just went about their daily lives completely unaware of how close they had come to total annihilation. Actually, it wasn't until after the collapse of the Soviet Union that the highly classified details about this incident finally emerged. People around the world were completely stunned. Humanity hadn't been pushed to the brink by enemy aggression or some mad dictator, but by a simple computer error that couldn't tell the difference between a nuclear launch and sunshine on a cloud.
Thankfully, Stanislav Petrov was eventually, and rightfully, honored internationally for his actions. Many bestowed upon him the ultimate title, the man who saved the world. Yet, despite holding the fate of civilization in his hands, Petrov remained remarkably humble about the whole thing. When he was asked about his incredible restraint that night, he just brushed it off and said, "I was simply doing my job." But history for sure tells a much grander story about his profound courage.
So I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. Think about the sheer fragility of that moment in time. History so often remembers the presidents, the generals, and the kings. But sometimes the entire future of humanity depends on one ordinary person making an extraordinary choice in the dark. On September 26, 1983, one man chose not to press a button. If Stanislav Petrov had simply followed protocol, would any of us even be here today?